Welcome back to the Naughty Dog Reviews. Last time we continued talking about the Jak and Daxter trilogy. The second game had a much darker tone than the original, but still did a good job of not feeling like a different series altogether. And well, they certainly didn't desert that trend in this game. So does this final game in the trilogy stick the landing? Well, the truth is, I can hardly stand it. Join me today as I finally finish this trilogy in this review of Jak 3. Okay, I know you're probably wondering why I don't seem to like this game as much as the others, but we'll get to that. First off, as usual, let's go over the story. So after Jak took down the Metalhead Nest and saved Haven City, the government took the next logical step of banishing him to a wasteland. Jak, Daxter, and Pecker, who is a monkey bird from the last game, are stuck wandering the desert until they collapse from exhaustion. They're soon picked up by desert dwellers who take them back to their sand society that's full of Haven City refugees. When they wake up, they're introduced to the leader of these refugees, Deimos, who proceeds to throw them into a death match to earn their citizenship. At this point, I was really enjoying the story almost as much as I was in Jak 2, but once you get past the first act, it really starts to get messy. To avoid spoiling anything for people who might play this trilogy, I won't go into detail on why. Simply put, in this game, it was never very clear what you were working towards. In Jak 2, you always knew exactly what your goal was, and it made every mission feel like you were working towards something. In Jak 3, I couldn't even figure out who the main villain was, and not in a murder mystery kind of way, but in a Spider-Man 3 kind of way. Before I delve into the negatives of Jak 3, let me go over the few things that I did like. Because while I think it's the weakest game in the trilogy, it's definitely not a bad game by any means. Since this is a Naughty Dog game, it's still one of the most polished and visually appealing games on the PS2. I haven't played the PS3 remaster, but I'd really like to just to see how beautiful all of Jak 3's environments would look. I also really like the way they handle the secrets in this game. There are way more useful things to purchase with your precursor orbs here, such as weapon upgrades, new vehicles, and even developer commentary that will play over all the cutscenes. The orbs themselves are also hidden far better, making it really fun to explore the hub worlds and figure out how to reach them. The wasteland setting is one of my absolute favorite things about Jak 3. It has a lot more side stuff to do, and I wasn't constantly crashing into walls or being stuck in the traffic that Haven City was plagued with. And let's not forget about Daxter, who is just as charming and, well, perverted as he was before.
Jak beats things all the time. Hey, Jak?
Yeah, I'm just gonna leave now. Last but not least, I really enjoyed the missions where I got to just control Jak and actually do some platforming, even though those moments were few and far between. Now sadly, other than those things, I really didn't enjoy much of this game. Jak 3's most glaring issue is that there's just way too much going on. And not just in the story, but even more so in the gameplay. You know how I said my favorite parts were playing as Jak? Well, that sucks for me because that's less than half the game. I swear it felt like at least every other mission was done using a vehicle. Most of the time it was a desert vehicle with a gun, but even excluding those, there were constantly new gameplay styles being introduced. Just to name a few, there's missile riding, robot spider piloting, turret shooting, Dance Dance Revolution, gliding, top-down shooting, and Daxter Pac-Man. While some of these minigames are enjoyable, there are just way too many of them to let any individual feel special. If I had been doing a lot of platforming or gunplay, it would feel like a nice change of pace to play some Pac-Man. Well, who am I kidding, it's pretty fun anyways. The one saving grace is the fact that we don't have to deal with Jak 2's trash mech suit in this game. You gotta be fucked. Also, for as much as I like playing as Jak, he also has too many abilities now. Dark Jak returns and is pretty much the same as before, but can be used more often now. Along with that, there's Light Jak, which introduces brand new abilities, which are healing, invisibility, slowing time, and flight. These abilities are cool, but they're severely underutilized. The slowing time ability is used only in the level where you obtain it and never again. Yeah, I'm not kidding, it's never used after that. It's pretty much the same with the invisibility that's only used to access one area of the game. The flight is used the most, but that's not saying much since it's still only needed about 3 or 4 times throughout the game. The guns have made a return, and instead of having 4, this time you have 12. The problem is that the new guns are so overpowered, and there are several that require almost no strategy to use because they just kill everything on screen if you spam the fire button. It just feels like they had so many ideas for this game and decided to throw all of them in instead of focusing on a few, and that really wasn't a good idea considering this game was developed in half the time that Jak 2 was. Having this much power at Jak's disposal makes the game way easier than it should be. I didn't have a problem with how difficult the combat was in Jak 2, I just hated the lack of checkpoints, as well as how suddenly the difficulty would spike. Jak 3 adds more checkpoints, but also makes the combat way easier by giving you a whole ass military arsenal. Instead of coming up with strategies to get through an area, you can just whip out your ricochet gun, or if that's not powerful enough, how about just use a literal nuke? And no, I didn't edit that footage, that's actually what it looks like using this thing. The annoying thing is, they made some of the levels that actually needed checkpoints not have them. This stupid mech suit mission was several minutes long with 0 checkpoints. Keeping your health up isn't even that hard, it's just that you can be doing so good just to miss a jump because of the clunky controls and have to start over. I just can't understand why they make you control stuff like this when they already went out of their way to make Jack's controls so good. That's why Precursor Legacy is by far my favorite game in this trilogy. You get to control Jack for about 90% of the game with only 2 vehicles to change it up from time to time. Even Jak 2 had its fair share of platforming sections, but they are so rare in Jak 3. Sorry, I know I've been ranting a bit, but I just had to get that out. I just hate the fact that this game had to be so rushed. If Naughty Dog spent all the time they needed like they did with Jak 2, this game could have been the best in the series. They even left out the dynamic music that was in the last game. The thing where the music would ramp up whenever you hopped in a vehicle or pulled out your gun. It's just completely gone now. I know that's not incredibly important, but it was always something that stood out to me when it was there, and once it's taken away, it makes the combat feel a little more weightless. Before I give this game a score, I want to go over the boss fights. There are 3 main boss fights in Jak 3, and they aren't as great as they were in Jak 2. They really aren't bad, it's just that all 3 of them are a do the same thing 3 or 4 times type of fight. The first Spare and Praxis fight in Jak 2 changed with every phase. You had to learn how to get past each of these phases individually, but here, once you figure out how to damage the boss, you pretty much defeated them already. I specifically remember during my fight with the second boss that once I had learned that you have to activate the missiles under the platform he was standing on, all I could do was patiently wait for the next opportunity to do it again. These fights weren't that bad, they just were pretty boring. Since this is the end of the trilogy, I'm going to go over how the game ends, so if you don't want that spoiled, then skip to this point in the video. Spoilers incoming in 3, 2, 1. So towards the end of the game, there's a twist that changes everything you thought you knew about this world. The precursors that were a complete mystery throughout this whole trilogy are just a bunch of weasels. Okay, personally, I like this twist. It'll make it funny to go back to the first game knowing that these creatures who were so shrouded in mystery are literally just dorky versions of Daxter. I could definitely understand why a lot of people wouldn't appreciate this, but personally I do. After that, you fight the final boss, then finally you get to see the conclusion of all 3 of these games, and it's really unsatisfying. So after the world is saved, Jak gets on a spaceship with the precursors to go see the universe. However, it turns out he has the power of teleportation because he somehow just isn't on the ship now, and stays back to go on more adventures with Daxter. Bad choice, man. The screen then cuts to black, and that's the end of Jak and Daxter. It just sucks because I really wanted to love this game and have the series go out on a high note. Unfortunately, it was full of underutilized abilities and way too many gameplay styles. There were times where I really enjoyed playing this game, but a lot of the time I felt like I was just playing it to see how the trilogy ended. Jak 3 is not a bad game by any means, but I don't see myself playing all the way through it a second time. I give Jak 3 a 6 out of 10. Not exactly outstanding. Thank you so much to anyone who watched the video all the way through, and real quick I want to thank my patrons. So thanks again Matonum, Abby Luhu, and OG Ray Ray for continuing to support the channel. The link for the Patreon is in the description for those interested. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time when I review Uncharted Drake's Fort. I'm sorry, what? That's not the next game. Again with the racing. Join me next time when I review Jak X Combat Racing. Stay safe, see you next time, whatever.